within 2 minutes and 12 seconds, I was able to walk on stage in front of a room full of strangers and somehow get them all to engage and connect with me. How did I do that? Well, the answer is, just then, during that 2 minutes and 12 seconds, I used 7 techniques. And as a magician, I shouldn't normally share my secrets, but today I'm going to make an exception. Before I do that, though, why do I care so much about creating engagement and connection? To understand that, we need to go back to 2009. I used to live in Birmingham. I was a recruitment consultant. I was renting a flat in Birmingham. And one day I went to work and I quit my job to follow my passion of being a magician. And then I realized I've got rent to pay. I need to pay the bills. So I thought I'd become a street performer. I lived half an hour from Stratford-upon-Avon. So I got in the car with my table and all my tricks, my show, and I did my first ever street performance. And that day, the biggest crowd I got was 6 people. Thank you for laughing. It was awful, terrible. And I went home that night, and in my flat on the table, I counted up all the money I made, £18.50, not good. I knew I was in trouble. And that day, I learnt the most important lesson you can learn as a performer, and that is, it doesn't matter how good my tricks are. If I can't get my audience to engage and connect with me, then I'm toast. So the next day, I went back to Stratford with that goal in mind. How do I get people to stop, engage, and build a connection? And throughout my career, and by the way, I should also point out that I realized quite quickly that is a skill. And like any skill, you can practice it and you can improve. And throughout my career, I've applied that skills in all sorts. For example, I was a TV presenter and I used to have to look down the barrel of a camera and make sure the person at home was engaged and connected with me. Or now I'll often get booked to perform at corporate events, 500, 1,000 people. I've got to walk on stage and instantly get them to stop and engage and connect. But interestingly about this skill is you can apply it to any interaction. So obviously in the workplace, doing presentations, or in meetings with clients, or in social environments, or arguably most importantly of all, if you're ever meeting your partner's parents for the first time, you need to get them engaged and connected. The quicker we can do this, the quicker we can progress all our relationships. So, I'm going to share with you those 7 techniques that I used in the first 2 minutes and 12 seconds. And my goal is that you will be able to take some of those techniques away with you and apply them to your interactions. The second technique I used was forcing you to be present. Just because you were looking at me and clapping, it did not mean that you were present. According to a study by Queen's University in Ontario, the average human has over 6,000 thoughts per day. Which means, even though you were looking at me, you may have been thinking about a notification that just went off on your phone, or an email, or thinking back to a conversation you had a few minutes ago, or if you're anything like me, you're thinking ahead to, what am I going to eat for dinner? That man knows, yes. I don't know what you were thinking. But what I do know is I have to disrupt that thought and force you to engage with me. So the way I did that is I began with an interesting or engaging question. I asked, do you want to see a miracle? And most of you said yes, which was very nice. But there were still some people in the audience being passive. And I didn't want that. I wanted you all to be engaged. So I asked the question again. Second time, more people got involved. The energy increased. So, when we're going into interactions with audiences, big or small, if you can start with an interesting or engaging question, you are going to disrupt that thought and you're going to force them to be present. And technique number 7, arguably the most important technique. If you were to ignore everything I've said up to now, that would be a shame. But if you just did this, it would transform your interactions. Because technique number 7 is care about your audience. How do I trick my audience into thinking that I care about them? I don't trick them. Every time I am in front of an audience, large or small, in that moment, at my core, I genuinely care about that audience. And when you go into a situation with that mindset, instantly you are less interested in yourself. You're less interested in what you can get from the scenario, and because you care, you're now interested about them. You are curious about what is going on in their lives, and you're curious about how I can add value.